Good evening and welcome to a new edition of To The Point. As the world marks Human Rights Day, we sit and evaluate how are we progressing on that front. With us this evening to discuss human rights in Egypt and elsewhere is Dr. Ibrahim Ghazzawi, Professor of International Law. A pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
The classification of human rights, because this is one of the issues that always is met with a lot of controversy. What constitutes human rights? What is the important aspect of human rights, in your opinion?
Well, we have to start with the most important issue about human rights is it's a two-way ticket, if I have to say it that way. It means it's rights from one side and also its duties or obligations in the other side. It is so important for us as individuals to understand that as much as we hope and aspire to have a wide range of these rights, we have also to understand that these rights are not for free. There are responsibilities. And probably this is an issue here in our district in the Middle East still. The culture of human rights itself probably have reached individuals not in the 100% right way or right manner, because many people, especially after the, I would say, revolutions, like what happened in Egypt and Tunisia and other countries in the region, they have translated freedom and liberty and rights that they can do whatever they want.
Yes.
But it's not the case.
Yes.
We have to understand that as much as we want human rights to enjoy them, we have to pay, not to pay money, but to pay respect for the law, respect for the community, respect for the rights of others, respect for the state and the government, respect for the nation, the whole nation.
Yes.
And if we look, for instance, into the Western world, the democracies that we usually look at with admiration, we will find this there. This, what I mean is the understanding coming from the individual side and also the understanding coming from the official side of the government. So it's an equation where the two partners, they do what they have to do. We have to get back probably in our recent history, especially the time that followed 25th January revolution, where a lot of problems happened because of the misinterpretation of freedom.
Yes.
So we had a lot of difficulties during that time, and that probably would explain why the range of crimes in many aspects have probably doubled 2 or 3 or even 4 times at that time. Simply because many people thought or understood the issue that yes, we can do whatever they want. This is freedom. But no,
Yes.
that's not freedom. Freedom is, yes, we can do whatever we want as long as, and this is the main issue and the main determinant of freedom and liberty, of rights, is I can do whatever I want as long as I commit myself to respect the law.
You just raised an important issue, because the line between human rights and law,
Yeah.
or respect of law,
That's true.
or law and order,
Law and
is
order.
quite thin.
It is.
And sometimes there is confusion. What is lawful versus my right?
That's true. And here comes also the difficulty for many people indeed. The culture of making this balance between my rights and my obligations. And which is quite, I mean, logic at this early stage of, you know, changing or moving from one political system to another political system after revolution, and where people are aspiring to openness and aspiring to democracy, aspiring to freedom, aspiring to economic boom, and aspiring to better life and everything. Well, it's still understandable that many people might be confused about the range of freedom they might have. Why should not they be given whatever they want? But
Yes.
the case is not. The case is there is law and there is the rule of law. And by the way, the rule of law is not there to protect the government. It's there to protect individuals, to protect the society itself. So even in the cases where the law imposed some limitations on the freedom of individuals, it's not a punishment. It's a determinant of where my right starts and where it ends.
Yes.
And where other rights start, other people or other individuals and others in general, where their rights start and when this right end. The law tells us this, and we have to accept that. It's not an option. I mean, the law is the law. Here comes the concept of the rule of law. It's not luxury, by the way. Even if we screen the communities around us, we will have this different levels of stability and security. And this is, by the way, this is the law of existence in any society. Whenever you find the law prevailing and respected, you will find stability and security, and vice versa. That's why we always say the law and the rule of law is the individual's assets for better living, for a better future, and for also fulfilling dreams of individuals. Simply because if we don't have stability, if we don't have security, it means the law is not functioning well. It means also that the whole society is threatened, which would take us also back several years ago, probably 8 or 9 years ago, where we had a lot of difficulties and a lot of problems. There were so many demonstrations at the streets. In most of the cases, these demonstrations, they started peaceful and they ended violent. Yes. What did that mean? It means that many people who participated in these demonstrations, they were not having acceptable goals or targets. Yes. So they just get under the umbrella of an acceptable act, which is peaceful demonstration, to do unacceptable behavior or crimes.
Is there a difference in international concept or international meaning of human rights? In other words, does the concept of human rights differ based on different political systems or agendas, for example?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question indeed. In principle, human rights are universal. It's all the same as a concept. That's why always we say that human rights is an absolute concept for everywhere in the world and for all individuals, no matter where we are living, whether in Egypt or Rwanda or Nigeria or France or wherever. So there is difference between two issues. Do we deserve? Yes, all the people deserve human rights on the same level. But the other question comes and makes the point is, can we all enjoy the same level of human rights enjoyment everywhere in the world, identically or in a way that looks like every individual in the whole world? No, it's not the case. We find the level of enjoyment, which is very much variable. It depends on a lot of things. It depends on the economy of the state, the capabilities of the government to afford for economic rights, infrastructure, education, healthcare, whatever. Also, it depends on the culture of individuals themselves and the public culture of the society as a whole. As we were talking at the beginning of this issue, we were telling that individuals have to understand. So the level of awareness of any society is very much decisive in terms of how far, how much, to how much extent we can enjoy human rights. And I have to tell you that it's very much linked to the awareness of individuals. Simply because if we understand our rights, if we understand these limits, and we accept it as taken for granted, we will live in a very peaceful manner with others, with the society, with the authorities, with our work, all life aspects indeed. And the problem usually comes when we have this sort of conflict. We would like to do something, but probably the law is not allowing this. Or what I would like to do is sort of intervening in others' rights or violating others' rights, like the right of a religion. Everyone has the right to adopt any religion he or she wants.
Yes.
Well, which it's taken for granted, and all the constitutions in the world, they have a clear-cut articles telling this. But the problem usually comes when some people would think that they are, custodians. They can exercise sort of censorship on the others to tell them that they have to do this and they don't have to do that, which is totally not acceptable even religiously or even legally. So, in principle, the right of religion, allowing or giving the right to everyone to adopt freely without any pressure, whatever religion he or she wants. Yes, we have to accept that. But at the very same time, it imposes an obligation on everyone to respect other choices. Here comes the problem. Even if we think or screen what is going on around us, for instance, in the Arab region, we will find this sectarian clashes based on dogmatic beliefs like Sunni, Shias, and that sort of religious beliefs, which is not even religiously acceptable, because it's at the end, religion is a relation between an individual and the God.
Yes.
So it's not the business of anyone to tell me what to do and what to adopt and what not to do, and etc., etc. And here comes the clashes, the conflict of interests, when some people do not really understand and accept this fact. It's a violation, a severe violation of human rights, that you think or I think that my religion is better than yours, and you have to change yourself, to adapt yourself to do according to what I think is right. It's not acceptable. Here comes the problem in many African and Arab countries indeed. This sort of awareness, the limits of human rights, where and when my rights start and when it ends. It starts and ends within my own space as an individual. And once it gets over to or spill over to other spaces, I have to stop. The culture of stopping is something that we have to work in our region, because in many cases we don't stop, we proceed.
Yes.
But if we proceed, we violate two things. We violate laws, and also we violate individuals' rights, other individuals' rights. And comes this clashes and collision between individuals and law, and between also individuals and other individuals. And we have to accept that and understand it.
As the world looks at Human Rights Days, one cannot help but observe certain basic violations of human rights of refugees, for example, of people suffering in occupied territories. I mean, look what's taking place in Palestinian territories, for example. Look what's taking place in Syria. I mean, lots of other what's taking place in Sudan. I mean, Libya, what's taking place there. I mean, I'm just pointing out to our region,
our vicinity, yeah,
our vicinity, and what's taking place in other places of the world. True. But as the world decides to celebrate Human Rights Days, where is the world conscience vis-a-vis those people that are really deprived of what I would safely say is basic human right of having a roof over their head, living peacefully, getting their basic necessities?
Well, that's quite an issue indeed. You mentioned some examples in our region which are really an open wound. It's examples of continuous bleeding, continuous painful living for many individuals, for millions of inhabitants around us. We talk about Libya, or talk about Iraq, or Syria, or Yemen. And other thing is, what about the international community? What are they doing to these issues, to intervene or to stop? Well, nobody can help any society, but the society should help itself. We have to accept this. This is
God
a
helps
fact.
those who help themselves.
Of course, of course. And I think one of the colossal mistakes that any individual or even society could really fall in is the belief that there is external power can support a society to get out of their plight or crisis. This is not going to happen. Indeed, the foreign intervention makes things worse.
I was just going to tell you, but the issue is the foreign intervention.
Exactly.
Occupation. How are you expecting people?
It's sort of occupation.
Yes.
Whether it's military or cultural or societal or economic or whatever, but all of a sudden the society finds itself under the full control of other countries, and that's unfortunately this happened in the Middle East. It's still happening in the countries around us, and still a lot of people might think that the support should be coming from the foreigners, which is totally wrong. We have to get back to the basis of logic thinking about our future in the region, unless people themselves have the logic of running their own business in the right way and making balance between different sects of the society and accepting others internally. No other power can support them. And look into many examples around us indeed, like in Iraq or in Syria or Yemen or Libya or Somalia. There is foreign intervention into these countries. And what is the outcome? It's always negative. It's prolonged suffering of these societies. And even with no solution in the horizon. Yeah. So, okay, I can be, enduring some pain if I have, the belief that after 1 year or 1 month or 1 week I will have better life. But it's not the case. It's even not in the horizon that there is a positive change coming in their life, simply because they do not think of themselves as a ruler of their lives, which is totally wrong. Of course, if we accept others to control us, we accept a lot of violations to our life. We will accept those others to come in with their own interests, advocated for their own interests, not for us. Yes. We accept this intervention to bring weapons, to bring a lot of things, and to bring also a superiority of their interests over ours. And here we see the case in many Arab countries indeed. Hopefully our brothers in Libya will have this election very soon and start themselves to think internally that they can have the right to decide for their own life, for their own future, whether politically or economically or whatever. And the alternatives are all very, very negative and very dangerous indeed. The alternative is a continuity of devastation or division, and the continuity of allowing foreigners to come and support. And foreigners usually do not come and support for free. They come to push forward their own interests at the account of us.
Social reform, would you consider reforming, taking measures to reform the country economically and socially, is a respect of human rights?
Well, it's not just a respect for human rights. Indeed, it's the most important segment of human rights as a package, is economic rights and social rights. We have to think about human rights in the right way. We have to live in a good manner. We have to have good living. We have to have good income. We have to have opportunity for work. We have to have a decent places to live in. And we have to have good schools and good hospitals in case we feel sick. And we have to have good universities and good education. But we can't have all of this without a good economy, without hard workers, without good management of our resources. And we have also to accept the fact that if we don't have good economy, you cannot have any human rights indeed, because you will not have money for good living or food or medicine or hospital or roads or schools or universities or whatever. So the magic word in human rights is economy. That's why probably President Sisi in many occasions when he was asked about human rights issues was always answering that the priorities for us with a densely populated society like Egypt with a population over than 100 million inhabitants, we have a lot of economic problems and crisis. And these problems and the economic crisis was very much responsible for the suffering of Egyptians, not other things.
Yes.
We talk about, as I said always, it's priorities, and we have to be, and he has as a president, as a decision-making level in the country, to preserve this attitude, which is prioritization. What is most important? Is it good living for all Egyptians, or just let everyone does whatever he or she wants?
When you talk about, because in the past it was mostly based on charity. Now even the slogan has changed, because it's now an issue of haya karima, or decent living. How do you see the manifestation of this concept? I mean, we finished a phase, now we entered another phase. The Decent Life Initiative is not just reform in a single area or to a certain socio-economic bracket, but it's really in various domains, even in housing. That's true. You don't live in slums, you move in proper residential areas, you provide nutrition at a certain quality to the less deprived people, the less privileged. I mean, how do you see this manifestation, and how does this reflect on human rights?
We have to admit that moving a whole society like Egypt, a country with a lot of chronic problems, especially in terms of economy, in the last 30 or 40 years consecutively, we had a lot of difficulties and complications and a lot of open complexities that were opened suddenly after the revolution of 25th January. And since President Sisi took office in 2014, he made and he paid a lot of attention to the suffering of the low income level in the Egyptian society, especially after undertaking the economic reform program in November 2016. There was a package of supporting those who are, low income level in the society. You just mentioned also one of the things that were very decisive in terms of this shifting in human rights enjoyment in Egypt. We're talking about the people who were living in slums, and they moved to a decent living areas and in a much better living conditions. And a lot of things even happened since then. We talk about health-wise, the very welcomed and well accepted campaign against virus C. And it's probably the most, the biggest in the world in our recent history campaign to give a cure to large, numbers of patients of virus C in Egypt. And we are very much close to announcing Egypt totally free from virus C.
Yes.
This is not an easy task.
No.
It wasn't an easy task.
No.
And we talk about millions of families that their life changed totally. And put at the same level the program of Hayat Karima, Decent Life, which covers the Egyptian village everywhere.
Yes.
Tens of thousands of villages. So the government is working simultaneously on different parallel lines in all levels of development. And we have to accept the fact that it's not an easy task. It will take some time,
yes,
but we are moving. We are moving, and the indicators are actually very positive. Whether the indicators of economy performance in general, or the detailed lines of economy, which indicates that all the numbers or the figures are going in the right direction positively and going higher and higher day after day. All of this is going to the direction of human rights. As we said, human rights mean that I have to live in a good life, in a better conditions of living. I cannot talk about human rights if I am living in a cage or in a slum, or there is no facilities, there is no drinkable water, there is no good food, no medical care, no roads, no infrastructure as a whole, which was the case. And we have to remember some shocking numbers, like in Egypt, in Cairo itself alone, there was once 1,135 slum areas, which is more than probably 60 or 60% of the population of Cairo were living somehow in this irregular places for living. With this national projects of moving those who are living in these areas to much better places for living, more dignified and more honorable places for living, the situation have changed diametrically today. This is an achievement. We have to accept that. It's human rights. So human rights is not just a very narrow or limited concept of some rights. We have to look into the wider vision of living itself. We have to look into new generations and their rights to start up living in a decent life. And those, the street children, the phenomenon today is much milder and very much limited than it was 5 or 6 years ago. So we have to also to accept the fact that if we are changing the big machinery of the whole society, from a society under a lot of pressure coming from economic problems, coming from accumulated infrastructure shortages and that sort of things, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes years and years. But if you put the achievement so far brought about its fruits, we have to be very much thankful to the fact that we have moved a lot in the past years. Economically, if we talk about 2016, for instance, the gross domestic product of Egypt was at that time 236 billion US dollars. That was 2016. The latest figures of gross domestic product of Egypt in 2020 was 394, which is more or less double of the number of 2016, with a rate of growth for Egypt economy over 3.8 this year, and it's rising even to 5.2 in the coming months. This is a message of moving in the right direction. And it's all go to the interest of individuals, by the way. It's enhancing living, enhancing incomes, enhancing health care, enhancing infrastructure that every individual is using from early in the morning until late at night.
Yes. Why is it that most human rights organizations, international human rights organizations, do not look at human rights in terms of the right to a decent living, the right to having basic needs met, and they restrict it just to freedom of expression? And here is even the issue of freedom of expression. It's a very, very broad thing, because I'm a part of the media corps, and even though there is freedom of expression, there is also the social responsibility and the ethical responsibility in doing the job. So why is it that most human rights organizations limit deliberately human rights to freedom of expression?
Well, that's a big issue indeed, because actually there is several reasons. One of them is most of these organizations, they are based in Western world, Western countries, where they are very much far away from our realities here. So they judge things from their own perspectives. The things that they have taken, they take for granted as existing there, they don't understand, or probably they don't know that it doesn't exist here. If we talk here about economy and living conditions, they don't know what living conditions most of the people were living here 7 or 8 years ago. They don't have this image of society.
But there are certain things quite obvious. For example, you do not have a right to walk into a mosque or a church and detonate a bomb.
Of course.
And then we say, well, we cannot classify this organization or this individual as a terrorist. And here we talk about freedom of expression. You cannot express yourself by killing someone or looking down on someone's ideology or mocking someone's religion or race. I mean, this is not freedom of expression.
Of course. Even in the Western world, the law there is very decisive and very intense in terms of violation. Not necessarily towards terrorism accusations, but even normal crimes. And you mentioned something about those who detonate themselves or detonate churches or mosques or killing civilians and causing panic in the society. Those are simply terrorists, and there is no other description to them. And of course, we have to look into the passage of the European countries and Western world in general, treatment of this sort of attitude and groups, which have changed also diametrically in the past years after they have suffered from the heat themselves in many explosions, many terrorist crimes committed into their societies, and the events of September 11th is not far from us, which when it happened in the United States, the United States, the whole system there, it changed to protect the society in America, which nobody even can blame them, because yes, they have to preserve, they have to you know, keep their society safe.
Yes.
So at that time they changed law, and they described many organizations in the Arab world as terrorist and terrorism organizations or terrorist organizations. They even intensified their laws, which interfere into what usually was for them sort of privacy and protected, but they under these conditions they were given like open hand to law enforcement authorities there to intervene and to spy on civilians. What I would like to say here is every society has some circumstances where these circumstances sometimes dictates more stringent measures. And if we, as in Egypt or in any other country indeed, are deprived of this, you know, capabilities, it means simply that the society will collapse down.
Yes.
We will not have resilience. Our circles of sovereignty, which is army and police and intelligence and judiciary, they will not be able to function. So it means that the country will fail. And the failed countries in the region, we have enough from them. We don't want any more, indeed.
Yes, we don't want that more.
Of course, yeah.
Minorities, should their human rights be protected any differently?
Yes, indeed. But minorities as a concept is a wide range of meaning, indeed, under this. Minorities in terms of cultural orientations, minorities in terms of religion or dogmatic beliefs, minorities in terms of numbers or social class or social origin. In all the cases, minorities are given extra care according to international law. And usually we call minorities not only minorities in terms of numbers, but we call them vulnerable groups. Vulnerable groups are groups usually are less in terms of their capabilities of defending themselves or protecting themselves, like children, like elderly, like disabled persons.
Yes.
And so there is special care and attention given to these categories of people, especially during conflicts, during armed conflicts and during confrontations, military or clashes or whatever. Usually they are given extra care. But during normal times where a country is stable and you have security preserved and you have the rule of law on the ground functioning in the right way, minorities are equal like any other individual in society. So the concept of minority itself usually raised at particular times. But if you have a normal times and conventional times in the society where you don't face any challenges, any security challenges or stability challenges, the minorities are individuals, are citizens of the same country. So they have the same rights, and they are also taken or accepting or must be accepting the responsibilities as normal citizens. But as I said, in some particular phases, minorities should be protected more than other people, because at this particular times they are more threatened than others. Like I said, children during armed conflicts, there are a lot of casualties. There are children or women.
Yes.
And in fact that they are non-combatants. They don't hold arms. They are not part of hostilities. They are less able to protect themselves or to defend themselves. And if you just mentioned briefly something about refugees, which is quite problematic issue.
Critical violation.
It's critical violation of human rights.
Yes.
And if we look into the news coming from Syria and from Turkey, and the flood of the influx of refugees,
Yes.
and tens of thousands of Syrians and Iraqis or Yemenis or whatever, and they have no rights at all.
No.
So where are human rights of those people? Where their country is destroyed or a lot of difficulties, and they don't have homes anymore. So now they are at the mercy of other neighboring countries.
Yes.
And in most of the cases, they don't have enough food, enough shelters. And the winter, now we are in winter.
And at very trying times with COVID-19, there are
Exactly.
lots of,
Exactly.
I mean, the whole world really is
Exactly.
having a burden.
Exactly.
Before we wrap up, what message would you be directing to human rights organizations and, to put it diplomatically, their methodology of doing their job?
Well, the message, I think that we in Egypt is hard-working countries. We moved, seriously from a country overwhelmed with economic problems and many other problems to a country with a booming economy, with a more widening economy and thriving ambitions for the future. Of course we have problems, but we are in the right direction, and that is the testimony. This is the credit coming to us from international monetary funds and from international economic associations or authorities. It means that this country is trying its best to upgrade our living.
Yes.
We cannot claim that everything is ideal here. We still have a lot of work. We have a lot of ambitions for change, for positive change.
Yes.
But we are in the right direction, and we have our priorities set in position: economy, education, healthcare, homes, infrastructures, investments, and this is how to guarantee better future for the millions and the new generations. We need to have a lot of schools, to have a lot of everything for the new. Egypt is probably one of the highest rates of birth rates in the world. We have more than 2.5 million inhabitants every year. And that number is bigger than the population of many countries in the world.
Yes, yes.
What does it mean? It means extra responsibility on the government, that we have to work harder, we have to do harder, we should not leave things to to chance. Everything has to be planned, and we have to look forward for better living for those people. And hopefully, of course, with the development of awareness of individuals, a lot of things will change in future.
Dr. Ibrahim Ghazzawi, thank you very much for your fruitful input.
you.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. I'd like
you.
to thank you, the viewers, wish you a very pleasant evening and good night.